let me just say a few words about the overall view of the not yet ex-Chief Justice.
Yes.
As I said in the informal short court farewell address, I believe firstly that he has been one of the most industrious judges I have ever seen in my life, and I have spent a lifetime in law. And I said that he has shown the energy of a bull and a horse combined as far as workload is concerned. Secondly, he has done what judges are supposed to do as their primary duty and task, which is judging, deciding and writing judgments. And he has plucked off the shelf dusty, moth-eaten files of 7 judges, 5 judges, languishing for decades, taken them up and decided. We're not on the merits this way or that way, but decided them, which has a cascading effect down the line for other matters. Thirdly, he has shown exemplary patience in hearing matters. The quality of hearing is extremely good. You go back without a feeling of rancor or dissatisfaction. And therefore, I said in the address that it's almost like the statue of patience, which I've seen in the museums. So he has epitomized that. Fourthly, his intellectual equipment is of a very high order, which is not something you can take for granted, qua every incumbent. It is something you do tend to take for granted, but it doesn't happen in actual fact. And fifthly, without singling out or pointing names, there have been a succession of Chief Justices prior to him, not all, but many prior to him, in the last, 5 years or whatever, who have not exactly been able to discharge the full constitutional duty with which they are burdened for a variety of reasons. Some have been, affected by external factors, paralyzed by accusations, or otherwise had problems with their reputations, etc. So he has shone in contrast, is my fifth point. So having said that, a holistic perspective, I would acquit him very highly. Now it is true, this is the second part, that if you discharge a very high duty of success, a high rate of success in 90% of you are a human and there is no infallibility. And therefore there have been errors of judgment, but I would still say it would fall within a 10% band. It is unfortunate that some of that has happened towards the end of his tenure. There may be errors of judgment. I don't think they are intentional. I don't think they are in any manner motivated. It's my own view. And I don't think you can judge the man by the 10% test and ignore the 90% test. That's the first point about the second point, and obviously these points can be made into questions and answers as you would like. The second point is the more specific question you asked. I would fault him on the fact that he has in a number of cases not decided wrongly because he's decided not to decide. And therefore, I would there fault him. Two examples I think deserve underlining because they don't seem to have any real reason. One is the example which relates to Maharashtra, and that time I was appearing for both Shiv Sena and the NCP. Now at our repeated mentioning, the learned Chief Justice, not once, not twice, not thrice, at least thrice, maybe 4 times, 3 times I know for a fact, directed the Speaker of this state to decide within a time slot. First time was 1 month, second time was 17 days, 20 days, third time was 15 days. The pending disqualification petitions. It was only because of that mandamus that the Speaker did in fact decide. Ultimately, I think overall took 2.5, 3 months. Now, after having brought it to fruition and ripening of the fruit, thereafter, against that decision of the Speaker, emanating from a repeated mandamus from the Supreme Court, and thereafter not deciding the final outcome for almost now what, maybe just under a year, is again I think something which I would not be able to find a reason for, no convincing reason, and no explanation. Another glaring example is the twice detailed arguments I made, not once, which led to a very big successful judgment twice over for the NCT case. The interpretation of the equilibrium between the LG and the NCT government. The first was on a constitution bench, but the main judgment in that constitution bench was authored by Chief Justice, then Judge, then not Chief Justice, then Senior Judge, Justice Chandrachud. And the second one was as Chief Justice. In both, we won a thumping victory, authored on legal principles by the same learned Chief Justice. That led to the Modi government passing a law reversing it by trying to reverse it by removing the basis of the judgment, which they are entitled to do. But anyway, if you are entitled to do it, you have to be testing it in court. Shortly after that, and I was in Parliament then as well, so I was there when it was passed, we came straight back to the court, and the court issued notice and entertained it. But it is now pending for again, over a year and a half. At least I would, if I recollect, 18 months. So this again is a decision not to decide which can have wide repercussions and constitutional repercussions, and a lot of the repercussions you are now, of course, experiencing in the context of the elections ongoing. But as I said, I've given you the good and the bad, and it's for you to make the judgment.
In this context, just one question. Can the Supreme Court issue a mandamus at all?
Mine?
To the Speaker?
Sorry. On the basis of the current law, the answer is yes. In theory, for a long time it was believed that he cannot, that you cannot. But I think that principle, which is based on bona fide conduct by constitutional functionaries, has long been blown to smithereens, and rightly so. I have no hesitation in saying that speakers, especially after 2014, and especially in non-ruling party states, so-called opposition states, have been appointed more as agents of the central governments than agents of destabilization. Now, in that situation, that applies to governors as well as speakers. Governors as well as speakers. The speaker, unfortunately, unlike a governor, is a persona designata under the 10th schedule. And where the speaker wants, he again can decide not to decide, prolonging an illegal government. Where the speaker wants the reverse, he can decide on the 2 days, 5 days, again upholding a particular kind of government which he wants to. And in many cases, simply delay indefinitely. And therefore, in the days when I did the Tamil Nadu case, it was true that the courts were hesitant, especially high courts, to give the mandamus. But ever since Justice Nariman's judgment in the Manipur case came, mandamus is given, time schedules are fixed. In fact, Justice Nariman in the Manipur case went further and said, if you don't decide in 3 months, it will be deemed that the man is removed and disqualified. So that stage is gone, and that has gone mainly and rightly because of the errant, flagrant, brazen conduct of certain speakers.
So his last judgment, the AU one, now giving it to another three-judge bench to finally take a call on that, and how would you see that?
No, I would laud that judgment. It is a common practice that a constitution bench decides, a constitution bench includes 5, 7, 9, decides matters of principle. It is nothing unusual, it doesn't decide the case. So they, in the first place, receive a reference from a smaller bench on a principle of law, and they are supposed to settle that principle of law, and then that principle of law is to be applied by that original bench or a smaller bench. So that is common, there's nothing wrong in that. As far as the merits of the judgment are concerned, I think the original intent of the creation of a minority institution has been rightly upheld. Not only has the Basha judgment been overruled rightly, but more importantly, there is a certain amount of mischief in the conduct of the central government in attempting to argue that the mere statutory recognition by a central statute, which has a lot of funding implications, as a central university, alters the original character from a minority to a non-minority. So that is fallacious reasoning. The two are actually disconnects. One is the structure of having a university. A state act can do it, a central act can do it. It can be even a deemed university. These things cannot and should not affect the original content, original identity at the creation time. So in principle, it's a good judgment. Lastly, the judgment has laid down very detailed criteria. So it's not one size fits all. It is said that you will decide this by seeing the entire from day one to the day end, the establishment, creation, evolution, intent, etc., 5-7 tests they've given of the minority character, and that's the way it should be. The mission of the central government was to change its stand, support the High Court judgment, which earlier it had been opposing. And remember, between Pasha and the High Court judgment, there was an act which made it clear that despite central university status, this is a minority institution. On the basis of that act, the central government took a stand in the High Court. That stand they reversed the Supreme Court. So I think that was a mischief rightly nipped in the bud.
So coming back to this defection issue, there are, I think, Mr. Chandrachud is the fourth CDI, right? Third CDI to have heard this issue and not decide. So don't you think this kind of delay creates?
See, first and foremost, I am of the view, and I have no hesitation saying it publicly, that the law of defection should be repealed by a one-line act of parliament. 10 schedule should be repealed. We should have a 10 schedule, which is a one-line 10 schedule. Anybody who changes parties must refight the election. It actually requires a 2-line amendment. All this making a new party, 2/3, 1/3, etc. And that is now also because to consider the persona designata a theoretical model of independence and impartiality is to live in cloud cuckoo land. And we are not people who need to live in ivory towers. Having said that, that is ultimately a legislative decision. Also, it requires a 2/3 majority, so it's not easy. But as long as it stands, one of the major scourges of the system, I don't agree that it should be there at all in any form, but one of the scourges of the system is this selective delay. It's a very simple model. If I am a friendly speaker and the complaint is against MLAs of the party other than the party to which the speaker belongs, then there is an immediate decision known to have come in 24, 48, 72, 1 week, 2 weeks. And you can just add, instead of weeks, years, if it's the reverse is true. Now, even the courts have stopped the fiction of not giving directions, but the process of courts is long. Everybody knows that you will ultimately win. For example, I believe that if you fight this case and argue it, very good chance of winning in both the Maharashtra cases. But then the process is the punishment.
Yeah.
By the time you file, then you get notice, then you get reply. If it's a very near election, then it is anyway infructuous. So therefore, these are the travails of our system institutionally.
And another issue is Article 370. Abrogation is fine, one can understand that. It's a political or the administrative decision. But to allow bifurcation of state when the assembly was not in existence, how do you look at it?
I tend to differentiate between two aspects. One is the bifurcation of states, or rather the downgradation of states to UTs. The other is the abolition of the 370 character. I think if you look from a purist point of view, whether you look at purist, I'm talking of purist Ayodhya or 370 abolition, you will find faults in it. But there are some institutional issues in every constitution where the constitution can be interpreted in a stretched manner because they concern fundamentals. And according to me and the party I represent, that ship has sailed. But that is not to say that the downgradation of status from state to UT is not culpable. That would clearly be culpable and could have been held to be culpable. And there's a lot of debate possible, there are a lot of errors, but the best way is to restore full statehood, which is full means actual statehood, not the Delhi kind of statehood. And that has been virtually the stand of the government, except that they've been asking for time. Actually, the government of the day should realize that a lot of the static about 370 itself will be subdued if they were to do it quickly. So they are actually going to, if I may put it crudely, protect and embellish a child which they treasure by actually taking action on the other front. So it's very short-sighted to persist with both. After an informal commitment to the nation and to the court, without a deadline though, that we are going to have a state, full state. So it's very short-sighted.
But it's legally correct to downgrade.
Well, I think legally it is probably an erroneous judgment. Legally it is wrong. But then, even that ship has sailed for the ground that even though we did an illegality, within 2 years we are going to rectify it. Or now it's of course 4 years or whatever, 5 years. I don't think that that judgment on the, I'm talking only of the downgradation, not of the 370 part, is correct.
Yeah.
What is the future of after 26 November, the cases of Shiva Sena and the defections?
Well, the cases remain, but perhaps one level of the edge goes out. That is the whole purpose of saying the process is the punishment. Theoretically, I mean, two things were, to be very practical. One thing which remains is the declaration of illegality. That remains. So there is a moral victory, a legal victory, a declaratory victory, a psychological victory, a people's victory, because it is published by your press that it was a declaration of illegality. So that is, I don't think, a small thing.
But it can't be, the implementation of the decision, if at all it comes, that it's illegal with retrospective.
So now that's why I'm saying it's a declaration. That's exactly the point. Now, there cannot be concrete, but you take, for example, the major decisions of the old times. Hegde got Bommai 4 years after, or 5 years after it started. By then, Hegde's government had been dismissed by 356 and 3 more governments had come in. But for all times, Hegde became famous and 356 became famous. So the judgment is still, I would hate to say, and I don't know, I am sure that given the narrow political approaches and sometimes the over clever approaches, the first argument after the elections of the government will be, now it's infructuous, please dispose of the matter, leaving the question of law open. Certainly, if I am available and I am arguing, I would say heavily oppose that. Now, it depends on the court. Court can, on a siege mentality on arrears, say that, look, we will not decide this, we will leave it for a better case. But I believe personally in advance, and they have not said so, that would be wrong. Because a declaration of illegality has its own meaning. You settle the law, you prevent recurrences, you send a message, and it's a very big legal leading to a moral victory.
In the Maharashtra case, since you are one of the foremost constitutional experts and we are talking to you, had the speaker been there, would the fate have been different, or do you think?
Congress speaker.
Yeah, Congress speaker.
Well, certainly there would have been a greater.
You have to change the hat.
No, certainly, I'm certain of one thing, that the speaker who was predisposed in favor of the defectors, if he had not been there, there would have been a difference. There's no doubt. But more importantly, if you go back to that judgment, which by the way is the earlier judgment, 22 June is it, or one before that? Maybe 22 June. 23 June or 22 June?
21st, I think.
No, June 2022 or 23? 22, no? Right. Because I argued that original matter. I fault that judgment completely. It is not only a case of operation successful, patient died, but there is no nexus in law between finding all the actions illegal. And remember, all the findings are in our favor. I repeat, all findings are in our favor, that these people going, joining, not participating in the CLP, etc., all illegal. Thereafter, the conclusion that the government which followed cannot be held to be illegal because Mr. Thackeray never took the floor test, are two disjointed, unconnected things. The consequence of illegality cannot be mitigated by not taking a floor test. Because it is entirely the illegality has happened much earlier. The defection has happened much earlier. The declaration of the judgment relates to much earlier. A subsequent non-taking, that to an act of omission of taking a floor test, cannot cure that illegal. So again, if you ask me, purest answer is clearly a wrong judgment. But again, the ship has sailed, so I mean, there's nothing much you can do about it.
Because that's what the reason cited. Right?
Yeah,
He has
yeah,
resigned.
yeah.
Okay. But
That is the sole reason cited.
Yeah, yeah.
Not only resign, he didn't, yes, he resigned and he did not go for the floor test. Correct.
Yeah. But as issue wouldn't have arisen. Basically, the speaker was.
Yeah, I think there was at that time not anticipated, not expected. There was in fact, I can say it quite openly that at that time, I said so in fact at that time. I said that there was no reason why and how a speaker can leave a post without consulting all those who are part of the ecosystem, and I give no hesitation saying it again. Of course, the consequences are much more than even he would have imagined when he left the post. That's not the point. But certainly, it is rare that a post as important as a speaker is suddenly departed from. This is part of history and fate.
Yeah. Now he's aspiring to be the CM also in case. Yes.
No, I am not so much talking about it. There must have been different. I don't think anybody, including him, would have anticipated what was going to happen. But it is one of those things.
No, now coming back to this political persona of Mr. Singhavi, and I mean, constitution was an issue in parliamentary election. Does it make sense even now in assembly elections? You show that red book and then say.
I think it does, but at two levels. One is the red book thing which you are mentioning is more a response than a affirmative action by us. We didn't show the red book. You, Mr. Modi, showed the red book. And I think Mr. Kharge today in both the functions, one which I chaired and the earlier one, very rightly pointed out two unanswerable points. One, it is so facile, so superficial, so I would say puerile to suggest that a red book is a Naxal book. So the first connection, the insignia was red. Second, we have produced, some of you must have been there, the same red book being presented by Mr. Modi to Mr. Kovind. Exactly the same book, forget red book, same book, red in color included. Thirdly, to suggest that it's empty pages, we never gave any empty page book. You can produce any book of the same color and say it's empty pages, that doesn't concern me. Fourthly, that book, by the way, is used by all of us. It's edited now by a friend of mine, Gopal Shankar Rai. I joked with him the other day, I said that you should be getting the maximum royalties from all political parties for the free publicity you are getting for the book. But the point is that, so this part is the response. We are not the ones who are raising it. If you are going to spread calumny, effectively saying, and lastly, fifthly, you are the one actually who is insulting it because you are associating a red colored cover constitution with Naxalites, with Naxal anti-national. So you are calling the constitution anti-national actually. Now the first part of your question, whether without this provocation by Mr. Modi, is this a fair point to take? I agree with you that it may not have the same resonance in all sections of the electorate. This is a different question and a different answer. But certainly it's a point which ought to be raised, is well raised and should be raised, and different people react to it differently. Some people look at the constitution purely sectional, narrow, own identity perspectives. But equally, Maharashtra, or in fact I would say India today, is no more rural and urban. A large part of it is urban. So constitution is not as remote or as ivory towerish or academic a subject as some of us think it is. You'll be surprised when we have live streaming of cases, how many messages, calls I get, and mostly praiseworthy and not trolls, saying that we never knew that cases are argued like this. We never knew that. So people, they are unconnected, there is no lawyer involved. They are not even very educated people involved. So people are interested. Don't forget, the technology revolution has made today awareness. Technology has been a great equalizer. What you and I see in our drawing rooms is pretty much what everybody else sees. So I think it's a fair point to take. It may not be, I agree, it may not be the same level as inflation, employment, blah, blah. That can be each person's choice. His slice of interest may be that, his slice of interest may be different. But to say that it should not be taken is not correct.
No, because it opens another kind of a window for criticism of Congress. Basically, you don't have issues to speak about it.
No, but we never speak of this to the exclusion of other issues. We never do that. This is one of the issues which we want to give up. We speak of this along with several other issues which retain their primacy. So did today.
And BJP has compelled you as a Congress party to get into this populist announcement. You know?
That's not actually true, because today we pointed out that if you see the schemes we have already in place in Karnataka and Telangana, it is the BJP which is doing the populist copying. As a matter of fact, I said in the other interview today that you can hardly preach to us or teach us about social welfare schemes. So you kind of camouflage it with the word populism. The world's largest social welfare scheme was Manrega. Not India's, not BJP's, not Maharashtra's, world's. The world's largest food security scheme relating to food was the Food Security Act. They're all world.
Yeah.
The world's largest Bima scheme was that Bima Yojana. I can reel off 5 more. Number 2, the same question was raised, hey Mr. Singhavi, where will you get the money for these schemes? This was raised not now, by the way. It is in 2009, 10, 11, whatever. But we have actually implemented fully till 2014 most of these schemes. The cutback was, if at all, by Mr. Modi. Number 3, Karnataka, Telangana and few other states earlier have done much wider social schemes, and for that matter Delhi also, which was subsequently first condemned by Mr. Modi's BJP as populist and then adopted. Adopted in smaller measure. So we are not defensive. No, forget, those are the old ones. I am talking about now Karnataka and this, bus, women, cycles, so many. Your own ally now, your current ally, I mean your repeated temporary ally, Mr. Nitish Kumar, started with all of these schemes in Bihar. Bicycle and all that. तब populism नहीं था.
So the competitive spirit on this populist schemes. I'm giving you 1,500, somebody saying 2,100, then somebody going to 3,000. There is no end to it. Then it will go to 5,000.
See,
how do you see
there is an end to it, I'll tell you. Today, of course, these scheme announcement has become more frequent in the last 5 years than it was. But today, there's a good flip side to it. If you merely try to outcompete mere announcements, you run a very serious risk for future elections. Credibility, non-performance and empty promises. So if you're in this so-called scheme game, you jolly well perform. Otherwise, you may succeed once, but you'll perish. So I don't think political parties will make such rash outcompeting schemes which they can't perform. Because today, having received money into your account, whether from me or from you, the electorate is pretty aware and questioning, and also will audit you post-election. So as I said, you may get away once, but the long-term effects of that can be very injurious. And a lot of them, the word populism is completely misplaced. We may be fighting the AAP in Delhi, but some of these schemes are doing great work there. Not now, for years. You can call them populist because they affect the average person. But if you can perform them within your budget, then why should they not be done? And the BJP is doing it all the time. The BJP is doing it all the time in every state. So it's hypocritical. It's hypocritical. Double-faced.
So this Nyaya scheme, the larger kind of scheme of things, this Nyaya and Thomas Piketty and Raghuram Rajan, they are also on board for this scheme. So you think it's still at the national level possible?
That is certainly a scheme which is, the whole blueprint was presented, I don't know how many, 2 years ago, a whole blueprint was presented. I think the Congress stands by it. When I last saw it, it's not been in the news recently. And it's been worked out in a nitty-gritty manner by economists, not by just some politician making an announcement. The details have been worked out. The devil lies in the detail. It has been presented as a detailed scheme. And see, ultimately, there are PILs which came. There was a PIL where I appeared also, where the court was asked to decide how far and to what extent and who and how much can you announce schemes. And it ultimately fizzled into nothing. Because the court said that ultimately in a democracy, the heart of democracy is the availability of an option for a party to announce something. And if you are judged by your announcements, then you have to let it be. And if I don't think any political party with the kind of media attention available in every social media, everything, can take the chance of just throwing in the air and walking off saying, aha, I made a mistake, sorry, tough luck. So I think you have to make something after some thinking and calculation.
So what is your opinion about ICI's judgment on private properties? Because the Congress in manifesto.
Yeah, the judgment has got it right in the general sense. But I do believe as a lawyer that it was possibly, in the Shakespearean phrase, too much ado about nothing. Because all that it has held is, the judgment ultimately says, virtually a truism. But of course it clarifies. I mean, it does have a clarification which is required, but it is largely a axiomatic truism, which is that every property is not public property. Statement one. I'm now breaking it down brutally, like a lawyer, more like every private property is not public property. Is that not an axiom? Some private properties, even though they are private, may be public properties. That's virtually an axiom. And third, we lay down here 5 tests to decide when a private property may and should be treated as a public property, which is pretty much what people were doing. But they put it more definitively and clearly. So I call it a storm in a teacup. Also, I think what they've done is they have expanded the zone of judicial review. What they've effectively said is, these 3 propositions I've given are more or less previous law. But they've said that it is our right to decide case by case in a very much more intrusive manner on judicial review, whether this public property is private property, this private property is public resources and this one is not. So, it's okay, there's clarification, but it's not a very great change except for those criteria.
A few questions on Congress's style of functioning, you know. ये छोटी मोटी चीजें like for example Nana Patole goof up in Himachal Pradesh where you had to face the Rajya Sabha. So I mean, what exactly how the yeah, I mean इतना सारा तैयारी करके and you have brilliant minds in Congress giving advice, legal and every count. Where does party go wrong? I mean,
see, ultimate answer is that you cannot make legal rules to police morality. There is no legal straitjacket which will ever police morality. I can speak about Himachal more definitively. How do you police a situation where 9 MLAs come and meet you personally, many of them with their wife or their son or children, and even say categorically, we may have differences with A, B or C, but as far as you are concerned, you are this, that and the other, and we have nothing to do with it. We will ensure you support. Now, there's nothing in democracy which allows you to hold a gun and say, you said so, I've recorded it, now you better go and support me. How do you police a situation where the customary dinner by the candidate, all of them come and have a rollicking time, and then the next morning, breakfast before the vote, just before the vote, they say the same thing, and then immediately after that, half an hour ago, they go and vote in front of me. Because as you know, in Rajya Sabha, the vote is shown. So this is something which is a culture. And the only answer is to stop this theorizing, sermonizing and discussion. And to have that one-line amendment or replacement. Even that people will find ways of getting around. But at least you have this thing that the moment you do anything which is contrary, you fight the election again. I'll be very frank, I think it was anticipated that 1 and a maximum of 2 votes will be cast against, possibly in Himachal. And to share with you now, that information was shared with me because I was slotted for Rajasthan.
okay.
And it was shared with me just before that it would not look nice for a Congress president, ex-Congress president, to even face a single vote.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very valid consideration. But I don't think in anybody's consideration that crossed 1 or maximum 2. So what you saw is you saw 3 things. What you saw were the abysmal pits of human morality. But more than that, it is not done out of ideology. You found the great lubricant, which only one party can use effectively, which hastened that fall in morality. Do you think they did it out of Sudden love for someone or sudden hate for me.
But why?
There was neither sudden hate for me nor love for you.
Yeah.
It was lubricated by something which is a very important vitamin. I call it vitamin M.
Is it a failure of intelligence?
I would agree that it is a failure of knowing the degree and the extent.
Same
Certainly.
thing happens again and again. Yeah, Maharashtra. When you have a chief minister, under his nose, 40 MLAs are just taken away.
But as I said, it boils down to this. Beyond the point, I am more concerned about the fact, and it links to the larger issue actually, which is something. The larger issue is that today elections are getting more and more money based. And all of this is a manifestation of that. I don't know at last count any of you have checked up the cost of an election, Loksamvad or assembly in some states. Maharashtra is the commercial capital state and city of India. But I'm talking in particular today of two states, one in south and one in southeast, which exceeds Maharashtra. Maharashtra maybe comes a close third or fourth. The amounts are astronomical. It doesn't matter whether you or me. The amount required to fight an election is touching close to 3 figures.
Oops.
Proportionate to the amount required to fight an election, assembly is touching, you can imagine proportionately what. So the result is that with this kind of, and this is actually a skewing of democracy itself which concerns me. Because ultimately, good, bad or indifferent, you have to manage to win the election with these things. You cannot say, you can't be a saint saying that I'll win. And if that be so, then you are going to have people only with those resources coming. If that is going to be true, then the reverse will apply for defection. Defection, nothing but the same mirror image, the same thing. Winning election and losing one elections. You tell me in Surat, how is it possible that 9 people withdrew their nominations?
Yeah.
I quoted James Bond. The first time it is happenstance, second time it is coincidence, the third time it is enemy action. 3 MLAs is bad enough, 9 MLAs withdrew. Oh, sorry, candidates. So you think again vitamin M, lubricant or some sudden change of heart or love or any hatred. So this is where it is happening. Money is playing a role. What do we do about it?
But
Nobody is thinking of the larger issue at all.
It
Nobody.
leads to a question of Congress's leadership. It's part-time, it's not...
No, I don't think it does. This part of it is totally, this set of people, I can assure you, and whether it's this 9 or the 40 in Maharashtra, and nothing to do with whether I'm part-time or full-time or over full-time. Nothing at all. It's a pure question of filthy lucre.
Yeah. But then, see, again and again it happens. See, what happened in Haryana? Haryana was like, only Congress could have defeated itself, right?
Haryana, we made faults. I think everybody accepts that. Some of them are obvious, which I can't speak about. And we have to learn some harsh lessons from there.
Congress is not seen learning. Don't you think so?
No, I don't think that's true. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of things. Perhaps some of these things can't be discussed in public, which is why, you get the feeling of. But there is a lot of, I know because people discuss with me, fora discuss it, so it's not that at all. But certainly, we have to prevent recurrences like Haryana, which according to me is a very high index of victory. We have to prevent recurrences like Himachal. And I think steps are being taken, even as we speak, we have steps being taken in Himachal, which are highly conscious of these problems. But where it is morality based, I'm not saying Haryana is immediately morality based. I'm saying where it is morality based, these steps can only take you thus far. They don't affect the final outcome at all. Because that is a different game. Do you think that any party with the most stringent full-time gun at your head could have prevented Karnataka, which I did the midnight hearing? Or Maharashtra number 1? This is Maharashtra 2. What about Maharashtra number 1 when you had a 24-hour sarkar? Nothing can prevent it. It's only one vitamin. And if you have the ratio of 50 times their vitamin and I have only 50:1, it makes a difference. That's part of the difference also. The resources available with the ruling party have always been more in Indian politics, but the degree of disproportion in that moreness is far, far greater now.
So along with that comes the question of central agencies.
And of course, that we have not come to it. That's totally separate. It is bad enough without it. You don't need the central agencies.
Yeah.
But with the central agencies, it is obvious. I mean, the phrase "no more washing machine" is not a laundry factory is the correct phrase. You see it everywhere. There are stories, not entirely apocryphal, of the person who leaves my party, privately coming to my party first and saying, almost in tears, that look, I don't want to leave. You see this. I'm not saying anything against you, but sorry, tough luck. I have to look after my family. I have to look after myself. We know the names. You know the names. Which government in 75 years has done it? Which set of agencies, we call them ICE today? ICE stands for Income Tax, CBI and ED,
Yeah.
has done it.
So it may sound naive and everything, but don't you think common man, he or, from his point of view, there are skeletons in everyone's cupboard. So what's wrong in trying to expose them?
No. See, there's a lot of wrong. Number one, alleged exposing in a highly selective and skewed manner is completely undemocratic and illegal.
I mean, it's
Highly selective and skewed. Number two, in the process of so-called exposing, you are making a mountain out of a molehill. There are some infractions which are less than a molehill, and you are completely distorting the whole thing because of the powers you have. We have enough number of cases of that kind. And if that is so, you have to not then condone. The condonation which comes makes it a skewed political non-level playing field. If your question is correct about alleged skeletons, then what happens to skeletons when the laundry factory opens?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is it's completely selective in the initiation,
Okay.
but then again the condonation.
But when Congress was in power, it never thought of using EDs and CBIs.
So who's wrong? We not thinking of it or you thinking of it? A. B. No, that's a larger issue you're asking. That is one answer. And I would like I'm very open and frank, so I'd like as much as you can to cover. I'm not mincing my words. But it is a larger issue, Girish. And that is that according to me, and I believe very strongly in this, the strength of Indian democracy, and I've raised this question with foreign audiences and audiences, that India is the only country out of 30 to 60 countries, 30, 40, 50, emerging from the yoke of imperialism between the 1930s and 60s to have remained a vibrant democracy. You look around you, the wrecks and ruins of constitutionalism litter the landscape of South Asia, Africa, South America, Australasia. Only country from Dutch, British, French imperialism is India. One of the major reasons is that we've never really had vendetta politics in this country, especially the central level. Now, the exception to that started at the state level decades ago in one South Indian state we know very well, from Filmdom. That disease then travelled much, much later to the eastern state as a reaction to communist rule. And then it travelled to the Battle of the Sardars. Barring these three egregious examples, you still had hardly this anywhere in India, at the state level and never at the central level. What this government has done sadly has institutionalized it, thereby compelling me to do what you did. Not necessarily because I'm right, but compelling me to adopt the same thing to prevent a question like yours. Why didn't you do it? That's not good. I mean, why can't the two ladies in Bangladesh sit together in Central Hall? Because of vendetta politics. Why could Nawaz Sharif and Zia Haq never sit in Central Hall? But India, Central Hall I've seen for 4 terms now. You would sit X here, Y here, Z here, any party, say what you like. The official rule is off the record unless I say it's on the record. Your young journalists don't know that, but the old guys know. Unless I say it's on the record, anything and everything under the sun. Now that is the lack of vendetta. If you have vendetta by such a high degree, you are actually institutionalizing a devaluation of democracy in the system by your acts because you think that you are eternal and nothing is eternal.
अभी तो सेंट्रल हॉल भी नहीं रह गया.
मैंने कहा Central Hall is not a space. I believe in this very strongly. It's not a physical, it's a concept. Central Hall is the heart of the concept of democracy. And you have actually a very good building. Of course, it leaks a little bit now. a very kind of 5-star, 7-star luxury, but you have no concept of central hall. And with that goes the fact that you have no concept of press.
Yeah.
You tell me you guys are all press people, how many of you can go roam around there anywhere? You have a cafeteria, which I have never got the feeling of central hall. I'm in my 4th term now, I spent 3 terms in the other parliament. And it is a conversational venue. Do you know, K.K. Birla till he died at it, many names I know, J.K. Jain now. Whenever he was in Delhi at 1 o'clock, he had to go to Central Hall. He would fall ill if he did not. Till 88. Because the spirit of Central Hall is something which you can't measure by a barometer thermometer. It's just not there in the new parliament. And that is the spirit not of Central Hall or Parliament building, it's the spirit of democracy.
But now it's changing.
No, not saying it doesn't exist. I'm telling you it doesn't exist. You at the most have a canteen where you can sit. See, first of all, the very distance of the two houses is such that you cannot actually go and meet anybody. You see the distance now. There are 2 separate poles. Secondly, you don't have anybody else other than the members of parliament to walk out. There's no press. Thirdly, you can't sit in that manner except, on a round table and order some coffee, etc. and food. That's a cafeteria. I've never felt till now. Maybe it'll change.
If you get a chance to rule, I suppose.
Huh?
If you get a chance to rule.
What I don't understand, what this government or any government will get out of decimating the central hall concept. Forget my rule or your rule. What is the achievement?
It's a culture.
What is
People
it?
doesn't believe in.
Exactly. Because the culture is that less openness, less transparency, less questioning, less intermingling, less exchanges, less cross-party linkages, which is the other definition for magnanimity. This is the real issue. That is the definition of central hall.
So, आपका सबसे who is the closest in BJP at the personal level?
I have no problem giving the name, but you might be decimating his career. So therefore, in protection of those names, I will not give you the name.
Other than Jaitley.
Other than Jaitley, you can say Jaitley.
Jaitley is now in the past.
But
But
होती है ऐसी बातचीत होती है?
हाँ, any case, मेरे से तो बहुत लोग बात करते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है.
Because people in
But there again, the central hall, जब था हमारा till my last term, the old one, there was a hesitation कि चलो वहाँ पीछे राष्ट्रों में बैठ के बात करते हैं या घर पे मिल के बात करते हैं. This whole sentiment of the Orwellian big brother watching is not part of either central hall or parliamentary democracy. It is not that there were not fierce exchanges earlier, always. But the atmosphere was different, clearly different.
And if someone visits a home, it becomes a news.
And unless you do it under wraps complete, big news. Sitting and chatting for long in central hall becomes the news, तो घर चलेगा तो बहुत बड़ी बात हो ही जाएगी.
और आरती करेंगे कैमरे के सामने तो और बड़ी बात.
I mean, I know that there's so many instances. I know that a person used to walk with me in Lodi Gardens. He is a very strong BJP, in fact, even beyond that. But he used to like intellectual discussions with me. And he said, I want to come to your place and discuss. For the last 6 months, I'm wondering how. Then he finally came. Possibly because the Rajya Sabha term was ending.
No chance of.
But the point is not that. The point is, this is not democracy. Yeah. This is the difference between you and Pakistan. This is the difference between you and Bangladesh. This is the difference between you and Sri Lanka. Correct. Which you don't understand.
Can you tell us something about the Wakf Bill?
See, the Wakf Bill is a research project if you go into detail, so I will not speak like that. But my objection to the Wakf Bill, which I have not, I've seen reasonably, but not with such great detail, is one, that nobody is suggesting or should suggest, and nor will the Congress party or anybody support such suggestion, that if there are issues, tinkering, cleaning up, modifying, straightening, improving something which has been found faulty in operation, it should not be done. This is a misrepresentation to you. That is not the stand of any of these, at least not the Congress party. The opposition is that under the guise of saying that there are certain problems, you are clearly throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And while the water may be slightly muddied, the baby is totally clean. the bath water is also not very dirty. It may be having some dirt. So you can do that, but you know, in that process you are changing it whole scale. Number 3, what is that whole scale change? You are actually, what is a Wakf? A Wakf is by a particular community an intention to dedicate for purposes ABC. Now, if it is obviously a community, I mean, a Hindu can't create a Wakf. Can a Hindu create a Wakf? Obviously not. So it's a community-based thing. You like it or not, it's a religion-based thing. Now, if a dedication by a religion-based person, which is the heart of the concept of Wakf, is taken over by people who have nothing to do with religion, then you tell me what is the violence to the concept. Now, the reason to do that is that, look, this Wakf has got this problem, they took over this land, they had accounts, audit accounts. Of course, that may be. I am not suggesting that all Wakfs are paragons of virtue. But you've got such vast power under the existing Wakf Act, you will completely clean up that Wakf. What they are saying is we will create a Wakf which is like, like a takeover of universities or takeover of something. That is the crux of the matter. So the idea is to achieve a larger object, a somewhat nefarious object, a object which has ultimately an animus against a particular thinking, but in the camouflage and guise of reforming, cleaning up. That's the real thing.
मेरे 3-4 सवाल है।
हाँ जी।
अपना 10th शेड्यूल के प्रोविजन तो सेम है। आपने बोला कि एमएलए या एमपी को किसी को जाना है तो इलेक्शन फाइट करना चाहिए उन्हें रिजाइन करके, लेकिन अभी भी 10th शेड्यूल इज इन एग्जिस्टेंस। सो अभी टेन्योर से महाराष्ट्र के केस में जैसे टेन्योर खत्म हो गया असेंबली का, तो उसके बाद भी उसका इफेक्ट देना चाहिए इलेक्शन कॉन्टेस्ट करने के लिए 6 साल का 5 साल का
होना चाहिए। अगर आप अगर
पहले किया था
अगर नहीं 1/3 से मतलब नहीं है,
मतलब चेंजेस किए, अमेंडमेंट आके 10th शेड्यूल।
आप 2 अलग चीज बोल रहे हो। अगर आप इसका संशोधन करना चाहते हैं 10वें शेड्यूल का भविष्य के लिए, अब हम बात अलग अलग कर रहे हैं भविष्य के लिए, तो संशोधन हुआ, इसको हटा दिया, तो एक तो होता है संशोधन कि भाई किसी भी प्रकार से अगर आपने समर्थन इनको दिया या ज्वाइन इनको कर लिया तो आप वापस चुनाव लड़िए। उसको और भी ज्यादा खतरनाक बनाने के लिए, डेटरेंट करने के लिए आप कह सकते हैं
1/3 से 2/3 किया,
कि
वो भी किया।
नहीं 1/3 2/3 तो वही प्रॉब्लम चल रही है ना। तो स्पीकर को करना पड़ता है, निर्णय करना पड़ता है। 1/3 हुआ है 2/3 हुआ, उसके स्पीकर 10 साल लगा देता है, तो उसका वो हल नहीं हुआ ना। मैं हल करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ। दूसरा उसमें यह है कि उसको अगर आप और भी लोगों को घबराना चाहते हैं, डेटरेंट करना चाहते हैं, तो उसके साथ एक प्रावधान ऐड कर दीजिए कि अगर ये हुआ तो आप चुनाव लड़ सकते हैं, लेकिन 3 साल बाद, 5 साल बाद, 6 साल बाद। सेम चीज जो मैं कह रहा हूँ, उसमें फर्क नहीं है।
कोर्ट में अगर डिले हुआ डिसीजन तो उसके बाद 5 साल से
इसमें कोर्ट के डिसीजन की बहुत कम जरूरत पड़ेगी ना,
क्योंकि बालासाहब ठाकरे के केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट का होने का मतलब 6 साल की उन्होंने पाबंदी लगाई थी इलेक्शन कॉन्टेस्ट करने के लिए। वो ऐसी प्रोविजन इसमें आनी चाहिए।
नहीं, वो तो आप बात कर रहे हैं एग्जिस्टिंग 10th शेड्यूल की। हम 2 अलग अलग चीज़ें हैं। एग्जिस्टिंग 10th शेड्यूल में तो उतनी जाने की जरूरत ही नहीं है, बिकॉज वो निर्णय होता ही नहीं है, क्योंकि या तो स्पीकर डिले करता है, विलंब करता है, या बहुत जल्द कर देता है। आइदर वे में जो गलत जिसने काम किया है वो या तो बाहर निकल जाता है या सर्वाइव करता है, और उसका आप देख ही रहे महाराष्ट्र में उसका पूरा फायदा उठाते हैं
और जुडिशियल सिस्टम में
और चलता रहता है। अब हम बात करें संशोधन के भविष्य के लिए, जहाँ कोई 10th शेड्यूल नहीं है, तो वहाँ एक तो होता है कि पेनल्टी सिर्फ इतनी है कि वापस चुनाव लड़ना है। अब मैं उस पेनल्टी को बढ़ा रहा हूँ कि सिर्फ वापस नहीं लड़ना है चुनाव। अगर आपकी हिम्मत हुई है दल बदल करने की, तो आप 4 साल तक चुनाव लड़ नहीं सकते।
डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन हो गया
बिल्कुल,
लेकिन
फिर आप दल बदली नहीं करेंगे।
प्रूव होने के पहले हो गया।
प्रूव तो करना ही क्या,
प्रूव करने के बाद
नहीं वो ये हम उसको बिना प्रूफ के बना रहे हैं ना। अब अगर आपने जाके इनके लिए वोट दे दिया, इनको ज्वाइन कर लिया, इनके साथ गवर्नेंस तो हो गया प्रूफ। प्रूफ चाहिए नहीं, ऑटोमेटिकली हो गया। प्रूफ भी तो प्रॉब्लम हो रही है अभी। प्रूफ कौन करता है? स्पीकर करता है, स्पीकर निर्णय नहीं करता है। अब ये सब तो प्रावधान संशोधन की बात है। अब ये जरूरी थोड़ी कि होगा नहीं होगा, लेकिन ये आपको कितना डिग्री बढ़ाना है बार का, उतना आप निर्णय करें।
तो महाराष्ट्र का मैटर इनप्रोक्टिस हुआ ऐसे आप मानते हैं या
नहीं? मैंने अभी जवाब दिया इसके पहले कि मैं बिल्कुल नहीं मानता हूँ। मैं मानता हूँ कि ये बहस दलील कि ये इन्फ्रक्चस हो गया है, माननीय न्यायाधीश अब इसको नहीं सुनिए, ये ज़रूर आएगी दलील विपक्ष से, दूसरी साइड से। मेरा मानना है कि एक घोषणा वाला जजमेंट जो घोषित करता है कि ये अवैध था, गलत था, वो अपने आप में पूरी तरह से विकल्प है, महत्वपूर्ण है, और वो इन्फ्रक्शस नहीं होता है। पर ये बहस हो सकती है, कोर्ट में हो सकती है बहस ये।
और इलेक्शन कमीशन का सिंबल का मैटर भी अंडर चैलेंज है। सिंबल का डिसीजन
वो है ना,
वो कैंसिल होता है सुप्रीम कोर्ट में।
हाँ।
तो अभी जो एसएमई चुनाव चल रहा है उसके ऊपर असर हो सकता है क्योंकि उसी सिंबल पे ये
अब बट वो तो समय नहीं रहा ना, ये चुनाव तो खत्म हो गया 20 तारीख तक, तो कुछ नहीं हो सकता है।
16 ला येते, त्याला काय अर्थच नाही.
वो तो मैंने एक्चुअल ज़्यादा लाइव केस तो मैंने ही किया है ना। वो आप बात करें शिवसेना की, चुनाव आयोग ने मेरे कम से कम 2 महीने की दलील के बाद क्लियरली, चुनाव आयोग तो चुनाव आयोग है, आजकल सरकार से दुष्प्रभावित रहता है, ये होल्ड किया 150, 200, 300 पन्ने के निर्णय में कि एनसीपी शरद पवार, एनसीपी अजीत पवार रियल एनसीपी है, और हम घोषित करते हैं कि वो रियल एनसीपी है, और ये सिंबल क्लॉक का उनको मिलता है, और हमारे शरद पवार के बारे में जिनके लिए मैं पेश हो रहा था कुछ नहीं कहा। मतलब शरद पवार एक अवैध पार्टी हो गए और एक सिंबल के बिना एक अनाथ हो गए, बिना सिंबल के अनाथ ही हुए, वो राजनीति के अनाथ हो गए। उसके विरुद्ध हमने उच्चतम न्यायालय में याचिका की। उस याचिका में मैंने इस ऑर्डर का आंतरिक स्टे लिया है। उसी कारण से एनसीपी लड़ पाई लोकसभा चुनाव, और उसी कारण से सबसे अच्छी स्ट्राइक रेट एनसीपी की थी। और मैंने बाद में मजाक की शरद जी से, रेगुलर शरद जी पूरे दिन हर बार 10 हियरिंग में हर बार आके बैठते थे ईसी में खुद, बाकी अवध जी और सुप्रिया सुले आती थी, लेकिन वो खुद आके बैठते थे। तो मैंने कहा कि अब मैंने आपको इतना अच्छा सिंबल दिलाया है कि उल्टा वो लोग अपना क्लॉक छोड़ के तुरई चाहते हैं, क्योंकि वास्तव में जो एक मराठा प्राइड है या जो एक महाराष्ट्र की प्राइड है, उसमें तुरई ज़्यादा सूट करता है। क्लॉक तो कोई ऐसा था, कब लिया था इतिहास में। तो मैंने कहा कि आपका तो बहुत होगा, मेरा सिंबल तो मैं बदलूँ। वो कह रहे हैं कि मैं अपना सिंबल नहीं बदलने वाला हूँ कभी, मैं वो लेना चाहता हूँ उनका सिंबल कि वो बंद हो जाए इस्तेमाल करना। तो ये तो हमारा अगर नहीं मिलता मेरे उस निर्णय द्वारा, आंतरिक निर्णय है सुप्रीम कोर्ट से, तो चुनाव नहीं लड़ सकते थे। और ये मिला था लोकसभा चुनाव के 2 हफ्ते पहले ऑर्डर, उसके बाद छपवाया, सब वो बनाया वगैरह सब। और उसके बाद जब तुरई मिल गया, क्योंकि उन्होंने अलॉट नहीं करते थे, वो कहते थे कि फ्री सिंबल नहीं करेंगे। जब ये ऑर्डर हो गया और चुनाव आयोग ने किया, तो वो गए कोर्ट में वापस, का तुरई नहीं दीजिए इनको। हाँ, इट्स एक्चुअली वेरी पावरफुल सिंबल, इट फिट्स इन विद शरद पवार्स पार्टी, इट फिट्स इन विद द इमेज, इट फिट्स इन विद द एनसीपी कॉन्सेप्ट। क्लॉक तो एक्चुअली हिस्टोरिकल लेगेसी, अदरवाइज नथिंग इन अ क्लॉक।
अभी वैसे जो डिजिटल क्लॉक आ गए,
जस्टिस आर.एन. लोढ़ा जी का जजमेंट है कि 6 मंथ्स में उन्होंने टाइम लिमिट भी लिखा है कि पॉलिटिशियंस के कैसे डिसाइड करो, सब लोअर कोर्ट्स को और सबको बोला है, लेकिन फिर भी ऐसी मैटर्स, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मैटर्स,
वो अलग है, वो क्रिमिनल है।
हाँ क्रिमिनल है।
वो इस तरह के मैटर्स के लिए मणिपुर केस में नरीमन ने 3 मंथ्स का, तो उसका सुनता नहीं है कोई। 3 मंथ्स का क्या होता है?
को आप मतलब रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे कि ये स्पेशल बेंच असाइन,
2 एडजर्नमेंट में न्यू चीफ जस्टिस की टेनर खत्म हो जाएगा।
नहीं स्पेशल बेंच असाइन करके पब्लिक में डिसाइड करो
करेंगे। नहीं, अब देखिए, अभी तो चुनाव का एक एज तो कम हो गया है, बाकी तो हम तो नहीं कह रहे हैं, हम तो कह रहे हैं कि निर्णय करो, लेकिन उतनी अर्जेंसी कम हो जाती है ना। अब अर्जेंसी कम हो जाती है।
खुद के लिए नहीं लेता, मतलब उनके 6 महीने थे, 4-5 महीने थे उनके लिए।
ललित जी के बारे में कोई नहीं कह रहा है, ललित जी के बारे में
ट्रांसफर किया चंद्रचूड़ जी के पास, क्योंकि उनको टाइम,
ललित जी के पास टाइम नहीं था, वो तो कोई कह भी नहीं रहा है कि था।
तो ऐसे स्पेशल बेंच असाइन करके
हम तो कह ही रहे हैं, हम तो बहुत बार कहा, पहले वाले बेंच पे बहुत बार कहा, 2-3 बार मैंने कहा। लिस्ट में लगा हुआ था, लास्ट वीक का लिस्ट में लगा हुआ है, अभी भी लगा हुआ है लिस्ट में आता है, लेकिन वो टेकअप नहीं हुआ है।
वैसे ही
आप
लोकल
असिस्टेंट ले सकते हैं, यू कैन फाइट।
लोकल बॉडीज का, महाराष्ट्र का मैटर भी ऐसी है, लोकल बॉडीज की इलेक्शन का
प्रोसेस इज द पनिशमेंट। विलम्ब तो है ना हमारे सिस्टम में, विलम्ब का क्या कर सकते हैं आप?
इलेक्शन नहीं हुए लोकल बॉडीज के महाराष्ट्र में,
जबकि ये जो आप कह रहे हैं लोकल बॉडीज में, ये म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज में कल ही केस का याद है मुझे, 243ZQ प्रावधान है, जो कहता है अनिवार्य है इतने हफ्ते या महीने, 3 महीने दिया शायद, या 5 साल दिया है, एंड नॉट लेटर, संविधान में लिखा है प्रिसाइजली फॉर दिस रीजन। फिर भी कई पंजाब में वगैरह कई हैं कि होते नहीं इलेक्शन, कई जगह कहते हैं साहब हम नहीं कर सकते इलेक्शन, डिलिमिटेशन करना है पहले, डिलिमिटेशन नहीं होता है बिकॉज और अदर रीजन, तब तक इलेक्शन नहीं होता, तब तक 243Z सब जगह हो रहा है। ये जजमेंट आ गया, जैसे खानविलकर का जजमेंट है तोमर के केस में, महाराष्ट्र से ही है वो। दूसरा जजमेंट है मध्य प्रदेश में कि कुछ भी हो करना ही है आपको 5 साल।
कॉन्सूल में करने के ऑर्डर
हाँ।
थी जस्टिस खानविलकर।
देखिए, कानून अलग होता है, कार्यान्वित करना अलग चीज होती है। आप कानून की बात कर रहे हो या कार्यान्वित, अलग अलग चीजें दोनों।
Another critical issue Maharashtra now will be facing is the reservation, Maratha reservation, and Congress has promised to.
But that, you see, that is one issue where whatever be the internal motivations of any party, no party has opposed that issue. in theory. Each party, on the contrary, tries to outcompete and outbid the other
Yeah.
in showing their fealty to that issue. I have argued both the matters in the Supreme Court, where it is rejected that 50% can't be just done. Actually, it's a misnomer to say 50%. 50% can be exceeded. But they say that, no, that is different. Tamil Nadu has done it by breach
Yeah.
from 40 years ago, etc. It's a de facto thing where they have not been tested it. Tamil Nadu is still pending without testing. They are actually breaching it at 70%, 80%. The 50% rule says in law that you can exceed it provided you have direct, quantifiable, verifiable data. Now the problem in most states is that data which has been produced by commissions appointed has been disregarded has been rejected by the courts. That's these judgments. Now, in some cases, I'm not talking about Maharashtra, I'm saying it is because the governments have established these committees for political purposes and they have no value. In some cases, maybe the court has not gone deep into the data. In some cases, the committee which may not have been appointed for political reason, but itself has done a poor job. Net result is that there is no judgment which has said that yes, you can validly exceed 50% because the data I have found shows that it should be exceeded. Now in Karnataka, the Maharashtra's case, twice it has been rejected by the Supreme Court. Twice. On the ground that the material produced by your committee, you know the names of the committees here, are not adequate. So ये तो चलेगा, this dialectics, but this jihad is much more a Supreme Court versus all parties rather than intra-parties. Whichever party comes to power tries to show that we are doing more than the other party. Yeah. But on the object and on the basic approach, the same.
But don't you think it affects the merit part of it?
It affects the sense unless my merit-based answer is that unless and until you have solid data, the point should be pushed, will be pushed, but you're likely to come up against the same result. Because the law will not change. The next Supreme Court bench may apply the same law. So you need to get data, which is why, this is a very important reason why Rahul Gandhi is actually speaking a very logical thing, which of course is distorted as reservation for him, reservation for you, reservation for her. He is saying first let's find the data. Then we'll investigate and analyze the data to see proportionate welfare measures kya hone chahiye. And then we'll make a policy. This is threefold things he's saying. What you are saying in the political heat is that no, we have decided to give reservation to all women with black hair and all men with 6 feet height.
Whether 9th schedule can provide protection to Marathi Reservation Act, like Tamil Nadu?
No, it is reviewable. After Coelho's judgment, review, 50% rule, review, same thing. Review होगा, and review में कहते हैं कि data नहीं adequate, you can't exceed 50%.
But some period, some years.
नहीं, challenge हो गया, that has been, महाराष्ट्र के लिए हो गया 2 बार ना, 2 बार for the state of Maharashtra हो गया, decide तो कैसे होगा? बहुत पहले हुआ था, decide नहीं हुआ अभी तक.
So caste census is the only way forward, right?
Caste census will provide a reasonable basis at least of arguing. You don't know actually, the caste census may surprise you. It may be possible that you may kind of have to tailor your scheme. And also, I find it in today's day and age a very, very weird argument to per se oppose a caste census. How can you oppose the availability of data? You tell me just as an abstract thing. The data need not be acted upon. सरकार तो आपकी है, आपको करना पड़ेगा. You can find 5 reasons to say no. But you are having a census for everything. Why not have a census? Census is only data, empirical data. Then you can start the debate after that you find on this table 90% are from Rajasthan. And Rajasthan has no representation on the table. Yeah. I mean, Rajasthan has no representation on the policy, but the people affected are. That will arise after you find out 90% है कि नहीं Rajasthan से. So census per se nahi hona is a weird argument. Because they are going further and saying after census I will do this. But who has said I will do it? Has anybody said that after census I will reserve for all people with white shirts, all religions which start with M, all colors which are, nobody has said so. But you are kind of over imagining that thing.
Is there a possibility that the delimitation can will be kicked down the road?
It has already been kicked down. 2-4 साल तो निकाल 31 के पहले होगा नहीं.
Why?
30.
Census will take place now, so.
I don't think anything will happen before 30 or 29, 30 if you are lucky. हाँ, ठीक है, बहुत time लगता है. That is not, you're not kicking reservation down the can. You're kicking women's reservation bill down the can.
Congress is in favor of Muslim reservation, but BJP is saying that it's.
We have never said so.
In Maharashtra, we will give.
That's the message. You read the manifesto. आज ही debate हो रहा है. Nowhere we have said these three things. First, we have said, you can quote me on this. We have said we must have a census. What is going on in the debate in Maharashtra press I have seen is that somebody made a representation in writing saying give us all this. That is not Congress saying.
Yeah.
So first is have a census. Second is on the basis of the census decide the vulnerabilities and the backwardnesses etc. And third make policies to address it for all communities. We said so specifically. The manifesto में लिखा है.
But can we give reservation on the basis of religion?
That is not that's like asking, we've never offered it, we've never said so. Nobody is saying so. It's like putting something in our mouth and saying that,
Maharashtra government has given 5% before when Congress NCP government was there.
जो भी आंध्र ने दिया था पहले, आंध्र में स्ट्राइक डाउन हो गया था. बट इस बार के इलेक्शन के लिए दिस इशू इज बीइंग पुट इन द माउथ बाय द बीजेपी ऑफ द अगाड़ी.
तो अभी क्या लगता है कांग्रेस के चांसेस महाराष्ट्र में?
I think there's very good chances, very hopeful. There is a feeling of a stolen election, a stolen set of MLAs, a stolen government. There is a sense of huge amount of corruption and looting of the national state treasury. There is a sense of angst at people hijacking the system, hijacking my father, my MLAs, my name, my identity.
But you must admit, BJP is more enterprising in handling such issues. You never thought of taking away entire
BJP is
party?
definitely more enterprising in terms of using the vast resources it has.
आपके ज़माने में भी defections हुए थे, लेकिन पूरी पार्टी लेके जाने का कभी आपने सोचा ना? And it's very innovative, don't you think?
Yeah, well, maybe we are not quite adept at some of the innovations of Mr. Modi. I think we're quite happy at not being adept at those innovations.
One thing which impacts both these gentlemen and me, breach of privilege. It's been weaponized, never been codified, and neither by nor anybody in 75 years. Why is that?
I've been a member of the Privileges Committee many times. So it's an important question. One, you actually have two questions, somewhat more unconnected than you think in that one question. Breach of privilege or privileges were not codified to actually preserve the collective power of Parliament. Because codification reduces the power of Parliament. It actually limits, confines and cribs, confines and circumscribes Parliament within the parameters of a stated statute. So the first point to remember is that's exactly what happened in England, where Parliament said we can't be straitjacketed into a set of rules. They never made an act. India mein Section 105 provides that you can, but this till such time, not. ठीक है? But the object was to actually preserve MP's powers or the parliament, in effect the government of the day's power for collectively. Now, the second part of the question, weaponization, doesn't link to this directly. Weaponization is because of misuse. It's the same weaponization as of the ED, CBI and income tax. Believe me, I've been on the Privileges Committee. It's the same weaponization. You cannot curb free speech of a parliamentarian inside Parliament by any means except one, privileges. Because his speech inside Parliament is protected even from defamation. Outside Parliament, if Girish Kuber says anything in the normal course, you've got hundreds of defamation cases which I'm defending. Always criminal defamation. That's how they browbeat you, that's weaponizing it. Inside Parliament, you weaponize it by referring to the Parliamentary Privileges Committee, which is a government majority committee. The reference has to be made on the orders of the chairman. So the weaponization is not directly linked to this. However, you are right to the extent that if no other government is weaponized to this extent, nobody. Just like ED has not been weaponized, income tax has not been the same way. But now with this increasing weaponization, it is possible that governments which follow, every government is in power would not want to codify it. Because it reduces the power. But probably later governments will now, fearing another kind of misuse of weaponization like this happen.
In Maharashtra, we witnessed bizarre things, huh, Girish?
Yeah.
But this is
Things
happening.
which happen outside the assembly.
Yeah.
It is a way of threat. It's a threat, basically. It's just to curb your. It is happening in Parliament. Many cases have happened. Our own, the lady who was just demitted office, she was in Rajya Sabha with me. Marathi. No, Marathi. Huh? Rajni Patil. She is. Achha, the style is very. Weaponize is the right word. The codification is actually a very academic question. The real issue is the weaponization. The style is first, the moment you overstep the line, the moment you speak up, when you shout a slogan, wait and watch, 2-3 बार के बाद आप नोटिस इशू कर दीजिए. नोटिस के बाद 10 हियरिंग करिए, लटका के रखिए. और लटकाने में बीच में सस्पेंड कर दीजिए हाउस अटेंड करने से. Rajni Patil went through, I was the one who was, there in the previous committee then. They kept her hanging for almost 3 terms. 3 sessions. बाद में ले लिया. If you be a good person, behave yourself. So this is nothing but a free speech curbing exercise, exactly like defamation law is being misused. Sedition this is the same form of sedition, the same form of defamation, the same form of contempt of court filed to create a pressure on you. But inside Parliament, privileges.
Again, the same process is.
Weaponization is the correct word.
Right, sir?
I think we have exceeded 5 full pages of Indian Express or Loksatta.
Not many of my colleagues will know. आप शेरो शायरी में बहुत रुचि रखते हैं.
नहीं इतना रखता नहीं, रखना ज़्यादा चाहिए मेरे को. नहीं मेरे को शौक है, बट वो मैं ऑर्गेनाइज नहीं हूँ. Recall is a problem for me. Recall is I love that. I've done better. Like a clever lawyer, I've married a person who has a very, very large repertoire and she can recite it off the cuff. But I have threatened her that whenever I get more time, I may go ahead of her. But I haven't got the time to devote which is necessary. But I have a good collection of my favorite things. And there are, it's a very...
Yeah, Irfan Khan जाने के बाद आपने जो
बहुत अच्छे हैं. बहुत सारे हैं. Let me find a...
Thank you. Listening to you.
हम आहें भी भरते हैं तो हो जाते हैं बदनाम, वो कत्ल भी करते हैं तो चर्चा नहीं होता. ये सब, this is a weaponization, discrimination. बहुत सारे हैं सब. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.